All right,
There's
so let's
plenty
get
of
into our
time.
NL East preview, including the Marlins. Probably not going to make a run for the division crown this year, but there are some really good teams, and it looks like it's going to be pretty top heavy. The Braves, the Phillies, and the Mets all looking like they could be contenders once again. Of course, the Mets making the big splashy move of adding Juan Soto. So, Lucy, I know that you are part Mets fan. It sounds like I'm like describing your genealogy, but you're somebody who kind of roots for the Mets in the National
Yeah,
League, and I think that you're pretty high on the Mets this year. Are you not?
I am, to the effect where I will say they win the division. I think that they will win the division this year, plus 220 odds on that. This team, first of all, they have Juan Soto, which I think will make a big difference. I would also take the over on their win total because they came a few games short of hitting that last year. And I think Juan Soto is good enough to get them over that hump and win, 4 or 5 more games. So I would go over on their win total, first of all. Second of all, division. I think they win the division. It was a report from Tim Healy earlier in the month, where he said Tyrone Taylor found a mystery loaf of bread in his locker today. It looked delicious, but he had no idea where it came from. Turns out Ryan Stanek's wife, Jessica, likes to bake. So Ryan gives out bread to the guys. Pete Alonso got one. They embraced. I love you, Pete Alonso said. This team has vibes. Pete Alonso is back. They have Francisco Lindor. They have Juan Soto. I think this team could win the National League, perhaps. If that, I wouldn't go. Maybe would I go that far? No. I would say they win the division. Just thinking about the other teams that are in the National League, maybe I wouldn't go that far. I got a little carried away with the bread story, but that's okay. The division, I think it's like they really love each other. They're going to win the World Series. No, I don't think so. But I think they can win the division. I think they will make some noise in the playoffs. I think that it will go Mets, Phillies, then Braves, then Nationals, then Marlins when it comes to how the division plays out as the season ends.
Okay, so you're not concerned at all about some of these injuries, like Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas. This is the thing about the Mets is it feels like when one thing goes wrong, a lot of things go wrong. And I'm not saying that they can't win the division. I'm just saying I think I'm going to be under their win total because it's still pretty high. It's even dropped a game
Yeah.
since I think we last talked about this. It was 91 and a half, now sitting at 90 and a half. So how do you think the Mets kind of overcome some of these rotational injuries? Obviously, they're not going to be out for the
Yeah.
entire season, but still, they're not great. Not a great way to start the year.
Yeah, well, I think the key is for them to met at the right time. So the Mets will met
Mm,
at some point and they will have
yes.
a slump and it will be rough. But for them to do that earlier in the season would be great because if they do it later, maybe they can't make the run that hopefully they do and win the division. But if they can do it and they can overcome these injuries and that, it all plays out or they find some kind of like mascot to play off of like they did last year with 10 different things with the OMG and the Grimace and the Hawk Tua, I guess. I don't know how much of a role she really played, but because she's not, who knows what happened to her. But I think that they can overcome that. But if they met earlier in the season before the All-Star break and then they come out hot in the second half, I think they'll be okay. They'll find a way.
I think they'll be okay. It's just the problem is this division's so tough. And you look at
Yeah.
the other teams, Atlanta's always a team that's good in the regular season. Even the year when they didn't have Ronald Acuna Jr., they won the World Series. And I feel like I have a lot of trust in their ownership. They have made some really good midseason trades that even if they're not the big splashy names, they end up being big role players down the stretch. The year they won the World Series, they made a trio of trades, I believe, for the outfield. Guys that really made a big difference. Guys like Marcelo Ozuna. I think it was Adam Duvall actually had a pretty solid season with them that year as well. So I trust Alex Anthopoulos to
Yeah.
get it done as the
Yeah.
ownership and making some of those key trades down the stretch. As for the Phillies are more a team that I want to trust in the postseason as opposed to the regular season. I feel like when I look at the Phillies, their rotation is so good and so battle tested that that's a team that I feel like if anybody can unseat the Dodgers, maybe it's the Phillies.
Yeah, no, because they also, I would take the over on their win total of 91.5. This is kind of the same team as last year, and they did
Right.
very well last year, and they went over this total last year. So I trust them a lot also in the playoffs, and would be a little concerned when it comes to the Mets, when it comes to the playoffs, because I think this will be a division where 3 teams make the playoffs. I think the Braves, Phillies, and Mets all make the playoffs. Mets win the division though, so in the playoffs, the Phillies could be tough. That could be a tough thing for the Mets too. That's why I'd maybe saying that they win the National League is a little too far. But I think that the Mets stand a chance. But the Phillies are tough. The Phillies are going to be a very tough team. So I think in the playoffs, they would be a concern. The Braves, though, injuries could be a concern for the Braves. I am very hesitant to take Chris Sale again to win Cy Young, as I did last year. And everyone laughed at me and said, that's stupid at the beginning of the season. And look what happened. But he did get injured at the end of the season. He was, I mean, maybe that was end of the season, like, okay, I'm done now. But I don't want to press that luck next year. I feel like injuries and their pitching, their rotation could be, in speaking with Braves fans that I have heard from, their pitching rotation is a concern sometimes. And so I would be more afraid of the Phillies than the Braves were I a Mets fan, hoping that they make a serious run in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Braves almost feel like the Orioles to me in that, like, I don't really trust their rotation, but they have a really good lineup. So I feel like those type of teams are good in the regular season, but when it comes to the postseason, you have to have a really good rotation or at least 3 guys you can count on to get the job done.